Today we're going to be working on Lesson 4D, solving quadratic equations by factoring. We've already looked at the graphs of these quadratic equations. We've looked at how to factor quadratic expressions. But now we're going to be working with equations, and we're going to be trying to find the solutions to the equations. Now, one thing you need to remember is that solutions, roots, zeros, and x-intercepts are all terms that are used interchangeably. And what those terms represent are your x-intercepts of where the quadratic equation is going to intersect the x-axis. That's from a graphical point of view. If you look at it from an equation point of view, which is what we're going to be doing today, is when you solve the equation, your solution will be the x-intercept. The term 0 is used because it is what you get when you substitute y equals 0 in for the expression. Okay, our steps for solving quadratic equations by factoring is you first want to make sure that you've put the equation in standard form. So you'd be in ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 format. You want to be in descending order, meaning your highest exponent down to the constant equal to 0. And then you'll factor out any greatest common factors that exist. And then using the flowchart that you used in Lesson 4C, you'll factor out the remaining polynomial. Once you have everything factored completely, you'll take each individual factor, set it equal to 0, and solve each equation accordingly. So if you look at this first example that we have here, this is a quadratic equation because the exponent is 2. It's not a trinomial. If you think about the flowchart, you would start, is there GCF? No, there's not a GCF. How many terms are there? This particular one only has 2 terms. It's called a binomial. Are the 2 terms separated by a minus sign? Yes. Is each term a perfect square? It is. So this one happens to factor as a difference of squares. So it would look like x plus 6 and x minus 6. So it was already in standard form. I factored out any GCFs. There weren't any. We used our flowchart to factor out the binomial. It was a difference of squares. Now, I have each factor, there's 2 here. I'm going to set each one individually equal to 0. So now I've got 2 equations, and I'm going to solve each one. So I'm going to subtract 6 from here. If I subtract from the left, I have to subtract from the right. These guys will cancel out. And so one of my solutions is going to be x equals negative 6. And the other one, I want to add 6. These guys will cancel out. And x is going to be equal to positive 6. So those are my 2 solutions. If I graphed this on the calculator, which I'm going to show you at the end how to do, it would look something like this. Here's 6. Here's negative 6. This guy's going to come way down here to negative 36. And he's going to graph something like that. So your solutions are going to be your x-intercepts. They're going to be where your graph is going to cross the x-intercept. Let's try another one. Here, we're in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. There's not any greatest common factors. So I'm going to go and find my factors. I need 2 things that multiply to give me positive 30 that add together and give me negative 11. So two things that multiply to give me a positive that add together to give me a negative are going to be two negatives. So my factors here are x minus 5 and x minus 6. Neither one of these can be factored further, so everything's been factored completely. Set each factor equal to 0. And then we're going to add 5. These guys cancel out. So one solution is going to be x equals 5. And my other solution is going to be x equals 6. Excuse me, let's fix that. And so my other solution is x equals 6. Now remember, you can always go back and check these. All you have to do is substitute the 5 back into the original. So 25 minus 11 times 5 plus 30 should give you 0. And 6 squared minus 11 times 6 plus 30 should also give you 0. Okay, so if you look at our example 3 is not currently in standard form. So what we want to do initially is to put it in standard form. So I'm going to try to keep that leading coefficient positive. So I'm going to move everything to the other side. Leave the y squared there. Move the negative 3y to the other side, giving it a positive 3. And move the positive 28 over to the right, making it negative 28. So now we're in standard form. No GCFs. Factor the remaining using our chart. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give us a negative 28 that add together to give you a positive 3. Now you know if your product is negative, you're going to have one of each. So what numbers would give us 28? 7 and 4. We want the larger one to be positive. That way we'll end up with a positive 3. Okay, so we factored completely. Take each factor, set it equal to 0. And solve accordingly. So we're going to subtract 7. Y equals negative 7. Add 4. Y equals 4. Okay, and again, we could check these by plugging them in for the y, and you would come out with a true statement. Okay. Just in case you're wanting to use your calculator to help you check your answer, you can do this similar to what we did in lesson A as far as getting the minimum. You can get your zeros the same way. If you'll notice right there, number 2 is 0. So you'll go to your y equals, which is right there. That'll give you this screen. You type in your quadratic equation. You hit graph, which is right there. You'll come up with a graph. Now this particular one doesn't have any zeros because you don't see it crossing, but hopefully the one you're doing will have 2 zeros. You'll choose the second button and the trace button, in which this menu will pop up. You'll choose 2. It'll ask you for a left bound. So let's say you were looking for this 0 right here. You would want to choose a number back over here, like maybe negative 3. And then it'll ask you to, and you'll hit enter. And then it'll ask you to choose a right bound. So 0 is to the right. You know, this 0 is between negative 3 and 0. So you'll hit 0 and hit enter. It wants you to guess. That's kind of pointless, so just hit enter again. And after you hit enter for the third time, at the bottom of the screen it'll pop up, it'll say 0, and it'll say x equals, and it'll give you the answer, which in this case it should be somewhere around -2, and it'll say y equals 0, because that's that point, is the point -2, 0. So you can also use your calculator to help you get these answers as well.